I'm so tired of all these garden chores and it's so hot right now. But you're not a quitter, are you? We are mere weeks away from the greatest weather of the year. And what we do now in August determines if our garden produces beautifully and fruitfully all the way through fall into winter, or if we're going to lose the battle to seasonal depression. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you 5 crops you will absolutely hate yourself for not planting in August. If you skip these, you will seriously regret it later. And stay tuned until the end of the video, where I will show you a complete list of all of my favorite seed varieties that I'm planting in August right now. I'll also place direct links down in the video description to all of my favorite products that I use in real life for starting seeds and protecting them with maximum success. As a point of reference, I garden here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, just outside of the Wilmington area. But the truth is, it really doesn't matter where I live because we are all in the heart of the growing season right now. And almost everything I will be featuring in this video is frost and freeze tolerant and can grow deep into fall and winter pretty much everywhere. Instead, I'm going to break all of these things down in 2 different ways. People who get their first frost in October and people who get their first frost in November or December. That way I can give you a little bit more specific instructions that applies to virtually everybody. And obviously, if you don't get frost or freeze, these crops are going to be very easy and you can continually plant them all throughout the rest of the year. Crop number 1 is the leafy green champion of my fall garden, and that is spinach. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking. Spinach? Really? Yes, really. Because spinach is one of those crops that absolutely hates maturing in hot weather. It bolts, it gets bitter, the leaves turn into little tiny arrows, and the whole plant is just a complete disaster. But when spinach matures in cool weather, and I mean really cool weather, the nights are dipping down into the 40s and 50s, the plants explode with these gorgeous dark green, tender baby leaves. And the flavor, oh my goodness, the flavor is sweeter, it's mellower, it's nuttier, it's the kind of spinach you would actually crave in a salad. And here is the beautiful part. Spinach planted in the back half of summer is going to grow under shortening days, which means even if we get an unseasonably warm spell in September, the plants are very unlikely to bolt on you. They will just sit there happily waiting for the cool weather to arrive. So my general rule of thumb is this: if your first frost typically arrives in October, you need to direct sow your spinach in the ground by the very first week of August, no later. If your first frost shows up in November or December, which is what I have here in coastal North Carolina, you can comfortably wait until the middle of August or even the back half of August to direct sow your spinach. Sowing spinach is so easy. Take your finger and make a shallow furrow about a ½ inch deep in your prepared garden soil. Then sow your seeds about 2 inches apart and then cover them back up with soil. If you want to be extra safe with germination, because spinach seed can be a little on the finicky side, you can overseed a little bit and then thin them later to about 4 to 6 inches apart once they get established. Spinach germination will begin in roughly 7 to 14 days depending on soil temperature, with full germination usually happening within 2 to 3 weeks. The great thing about spinach is it can be harvested as baby leaf in as little as 35 to 40 days, or you can let it mature into full-size plants that take roughly 50 to 60 days from sowing. Now here is the part that gets exciting. Spinach is stupid cold hardy. I'm talking ridiculously cold hardy. With absolutely no protection, mature spinach plants can handle frosts and light freezes down into the mid-20s Fahrenheit with no problem whatsoever. And if you toss a layer of that 1.5 ounce agricultural fabric over the top of your spinach row, you can push harvest deep into winter and they will keep producing tender leaves for you even after repeated hard freezes. I've personally harvested spinach out of my garden in January here in Zone 8 by using a simple low tunnel with row cover, and the plants just kept cranking out new growth after every warm spell. If you direct sowed your spinach and you are suddenly having problems with birds scratching up your seedlings or pill bugs chewing on the tender leaves, the easy fix is to toss some lightweight insect netting over the row for the first 2 or 3 weeks until the plants get established and bigger and the pests move on. Crop number 2 is actually a 2-for-1 deal. I'm talking radishes and turnips. And before you roll your eyes and say radishes are boring, hear me out, because late summer sown radishes and turnips are an absolute game changer for the fall garden. Both of these crops are in the brassica family, which means they love cool weather and they really struggle in the heat of midsummer. But when you sow them in August, they germinate fast, they grow fast, and they are ready to harvest before your first frost even arrives in most climates. And if you are in a warmer climate with a late first frost, they will hold in the garden for weeks and weeks after maturing and just sit there waiting for you to pull them. The flavor of a radish or a turnip that has matured in cool fall weather is on a completely different level compared to the spicy, harsh little rocks you get from a spring planting. They are sweeter, they are milder, they are juicier, and they have this wonderful crisp texture that just makes them a joy to eat. Now let me break down radish versus turnip because they do have slightly different planting strategies. For salad-type radishes, like the classic cherry belle or French breakfast varieties, you want to direct sow them about a ½ inch deep and 1 inch apart in rows that are spaced roughly 3 to 6 inches apart. These little radishes germinate in as few as 3 to 5 days, and they go from seed to harvest in 25 to 35 days. You can literally sow these today and be pulling mature radishes out of your garden before the end of September. For winter storage radishes like the long daikon types or the round black Spanish varieties, they take longer, usually 60 to 90 days to maturity, so those need to go in the ground by early to mid-August at the absolute latest. Turnips get sown pretty much the same way. Make a shallow furrow about a ½ inch deep, sow your seeds about 2 to 3 inches apart, cover them up, and water them in. Turnip seeds germinate in about 5 to 10 days, and most varieties are ready to harvest in 45 to 65 days. So even in a climate with an October 1st frost, a turnip sown in early August has more than enough time to size up before the cold arrives. Both radishes and turnips can be succession planted in waves every 2 weeks throughout August and into early September, so you can spread out your harvest window and have a steady supply on the table instead of a single giant glut all at once. Now here is the protection strategy. If you direct sow your radish or turnip seeds in the middle of August and the soil temperature is still cooking hot, you can lay a piece of shade cloth over the row until you see the first seedlings emerge and then remove it. This keeps the soil a little cooler and dramatically improves germination rates in dog days of summer conditions. Once the seedlings are up and growing, both of these crops are tough enough to handle full sun on their own. And when those first frosts threaten in October or November, simply toss some agricultural fabric over the tops of the plants, and you can keep harvesting them well past the point where unprotected crops would be completely done. Crop number 3 is Swiss chard. And I am telling you right now, if you have never grown chard for a fall harvest, you are absolutely missing out. Swiss chard is the ultimate cut and come again leafy green because you can harvest the outer leaves over and over and over, and the plant just keeps pushing out new growth from the center. One well-tended chard plant can feed you for months. And unlike spinach and lettuce, which can be a little fussy about extreme cold, chard just keeps on trucking even when temperatures drop down into the low 20s Fahrenheit. It is one of the most cold-tolerant leafy greens in my entire garden, and it never fails to impress me with its sheer hardiness. Sowing chard is a little different than the other crops we have talked about today because you have 2 options. You can direct sow it straight into the garden in August, or you can start it indoors in seed trays about 4 to 6 weeks before you intend to set transplants out into the garden. For most home gardeners, the direct sow method is plenty fast enough. Just make a shallow furrow about 1/4 to a ½ inch deep and sow seeds about 2 to 4 inches apart in rows that are spaced 12 to 18 inches apart. Cover them up, water them in gently, and keep the soil moist until germination, which will happen in roughly 5 to 17 days. Once the seedlings are a few inches tall, you will want to thin them to about 4 to 6 inches apart so the plants have plenty of room to develop those big, gorgeous ribbed leaves. Swiss chard takes roughly 55 to 65 days from sowing to first harvest for full-sized leaves, but you can start snipping tender baby leaves much sooner than that. And here is the beautiful thing about chard. Even after a hard frost nips the outer leaves and they look a little droopy and sad, the crown of the plant will survive and push out fresh new growth as soon as the weather warms up even slightly. I have had chard plants come back from what looked like total death after a hard freeze in the teens. They are absolute tanks. If you start your chard indoors and you transplant it out into the garden in early to mid-September and the sun is still brutally intense and the bugs are still hammering everything, you can throw insect netting over the transplants to keep the cabbage worms and the leaf miners off of them. Or you can put up a simple shade cloth overhead to take the edge off of that late summer sun until the plants get established and the weather cools down a little bit. Crop number 4 is bush beans. And yes, I know beans are technically a warm season crop, but hear me out because bush beans are one of the fastest maturing things in the entire vegetable kingdom, and they have absolutely no problem producing a full harvest for you well before your first fall frost arrives. Most bush bean varieties go from seed to harvest in a mere 45 to 55 days. That is faster than a cucumber, faster than a zucchini, faster than just about anything you can think of. So if you pop a row of bush beans in the ground right now, the first week of August, you will be picking tender green beans off of those plants by the 3rd or 4th week of September. And here is the part that really changes the game for late season bean plantings. The worst pest pressure of the entire summer is almost always behind us by the second half of August. The Mexican bean beetles that hammer your spring-planted beans have finished their reproductive cycle and are mostly gone. The stink bugs are less aggressive. The Japanese beetle swarm is usually over, so you get to grow beans with a fraction of the pest pressure you dealt with back in May and June. It is honestly beautiful. Sowing bush beans couldn't be simpler. Wait for your soil temperature to be at least 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then take your finger or a hoe and make a furrow about 1.5 inches to 2 inches deep. Drop your bean seeds about 3 to 4 inches apart in the furrow, cover them up and water them in well. Bush bean seeds are big and sturdy and they germinate in as little as 7 to 10 days when the soil is warm and moist. Once they pop up out of the ground, they grow shockingly fast. You will be amazed at how quickly they go from a tiny seedling to a full-sized bushy plant covered in flowers and pods. Here is my strong recommendation for late summer bean plantings. Choose the earliest maturing varieties you can find. Anything in the 45 to 50 day range is ideal because you are racing that first fall frost and you want to give yourself every possible day of growing season. There are tons of great options out there. Provider, Contender, Royal Burgundy, the list goes on and on. Bush beans are not frost tolerant at all. A single light frost will usually take them out completely. So if you are pushing into October with your bean harvest and a frost is coming, just plan on picking everything you can the day before and letting the plant go. They will not survive a freeze no matter what you do, but because they are so fast and so productive, you will easily get multiple big harvests off of each plant before that frost ever arrives. So don't sleep on late season bush beans. They are an absolute gift. Crop number 5 is a bit of an unsung hero in the fall garden, and that would be kohlrabi. Now, if you have never grown kohlrabi before, you might be looking at this alien-looking little bulbous stem and wondering what on earth you are supposed to do with it. But trust me on this one, because kohlrabi is one of the most underrated vegetables in the entire gardening world. It is part of the brassica family, so it has that same gorgeous sweet cabbage-like flavor, but it grows above ground in this wonderful crisp swollen stem that is just an absolute delight to eat raw, sliced into salads, roasted in the oven, or thrown into stir-fries. My kids will eat kohlrabi slices like they are apple slices, and that is high praise from a house full of picky eaters. The really cool thing about kohlrabi as a fall crop is it matures incredibly fast. Most varieties are ready to harvest in just 60 to 65 days from sowing. So direct sow them in early to mid-August and you will be harvesting fat little bulbs by mid to late October, right when the weather is cooling down and the flavor is sweetening up beautifully. Kohlrabi absolutely loves cool weather, and it is one of those crops that gets noticeably better as the temperatures drop. Sowing kohlrabi is super straightforward. Direct sow the seeds about 1/2 inch deep and space them about 4 to 6 inches apart in rows that are 12 to 18 inches apart. You can also start them indoors in seed trays about 4 weeks before transplanting if you want to get a little head start on the season, but honestly, direct sowing works just fine for a fall crop. Kohlrabi seeds germinate in about 3 to 10 days, and once the seedlings are up, they grow remarkably fast with very little fuss. Just keep them well watered and give them a light feeding of an all-purpose organic fertilizer once they get a few inches tall, and they will absolutely take off. Here is the part about kohlrabi that I think most people overlook. It is incredibly frost and freeze tolerant for a brassica. Mature kohlrabi plants can handle temperatures well down into the mid-20s Fahrenheit with only minor leaf damage. And if you throw a piece of agricultural fabric over the top of your kohlrabi row when a hard freeze is predicted, the plants will easily sail through temperatures in the high teens without any problems at all. So unlike your tender lettuce and basil that absolutely die at the first sign of cold, kohlrabi just keeps going and going. You can literally leave kohlrabi plants standing in the garden all the way through fall and into early winter in most climates, and just harvest them whenever you want a meal. And just like with all of the other brassica family crops, if you are having insect pest issues at the time of transplanting or direct sowing, cover the young plants with insect netting for the first few weeks to keep the cabbage worms, flea beetles, and aphids off of them until they are big enough to handle a little bit of chewing. And that right there are 5 of my favorite crops to plant in August. 5 crops that will absolutely pull your fall and winter garden out of the dumps and give you a steady supply of fresh homegrown food for months and months to come. And I strongly recommend you at the very least plant a few of the things in this video, because if you don't, you will seriously regret it later. I know I would. I know so many of us are burnt out right now from gardening in the rain and humidity and thunderstorms and high heat and the bugs, and we may not want to be out in our garden at all, but in a matter of 4 or 5 weeks, the weather is going to be cooling off dramatically. The humidity is going to start dropping, the thunderstorms are going to be going away, and we are going to get those gorgeous low humidity blue sky days of fall that just make you want to spend every single waking hour outside working in the garden. And we are going to wish that we had things growing out there to tend to, because before we know it, the sun is going to be setting earlier and earlier every evening, and we are going to start having issues with seasonal depression creeping in. And having a garden and things to tend to in the fall has been absolutely curative for my own seasonal depression. It really was the missing piece of the puzzle for me, because I used to have terrible seasonal affective disorder, and now it is virtually gone. I cannot say it will work for absolutely everybody, but I can definitely say it helps. And if you are a gardener out there watching this right now saying to yourself, it is too cold in the winter where I live, or it is too hot in the summer where I live, and there is just no way, that is just an excuse. And as my buddy always says, excuses are just well-planned lies. You do not have to settle for the weather that you have. That is exactly why I use PVC hoop houses and row cover fabric and shade cloth in my own garden. If all I did was garden under the open sky where I live, I would not be able to grow anything, because our summers are way too hot and wet and our winters are way too cold for most things. But by using covers and hoops to my advantage, I take a lot of that weather completely out of the equation. The agricultural fabrics turn my cold winters into perfectly acceptable growing conditions for a huge variety of fall and winter crops, and using shade cloth and insect netting, I can defeat a lot of my summer pest and heat problems too. It has completely transformed my garden from one that looked terrible by the middle of July into one that produces fresh food 365 days a year. You absolutely can do this too. Just use the covers to your advantage. And as promised, here is a list of some of my favorite seed varieties for the crops featured in this video. I place direct links to every single one of these seeds down in the video description if you want to purchase them for yourself. So everybody, I hope you found this video informational and educational and inspiring. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you are notified when I release more videos like these. I place links in the video description to my favorite seeds and my favorite products that I featured in this video, and for everything else I use in real life in my yard and garden, that is all linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description as well. And while you are down there, check out my website for all things gardening and custom merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.